Hi everyone, Leanne here from Jaded Blossom, and I have a quick card for you today. I'm using Rain or Shine Paint Splatters 2. I'll be using some other things, but I'll have those, I'll show you those a little later. I'm using the Taylor Expressions 6x6 inch designer masking stencils, and I'll be using Distress Oxide ink and fossilized amber, squeezed lemonade, scattered straw, and mustard seed. So first I'm going to do some ink blending, and I'm using that Taylor Expressions what's it called again? The 6x6 inch designer masking stencil for the circles. And I'm just blending on some squeezed lemonade with my blending brushes from Tailored Expressions. I love this stencil. It's kind of handy. It's neat for, you can line it up if you want it centered. There's some etched lines there for you. I'm also using my Wendy Vecchi Make Art Station from Ranger just to hold down the stencil. And it's got a nice slick surface so you can clean it off really well. Today I'm working on my Tonic Studios Tim Holtz glass mat. And here I just pulled out a piece of foam because I'm going to be doing some stamping without my Misty. It's a rare process. Sometimes I do. I'm using Paint Splatters 2. I'm using that strippy type of distressed stamp, and I'll be doing some stamping on this card. I'm giving my son some rays. That's the look I'm going for, sort of distressed rays, and I'm going to cover up the sun that I already inked using the center part of the masking stencil that comes with those stencils, which I think is pretty handy. I'm just going to tape it in place with some purple tape just so it doesn't move while I'm doing some stamping. Now I'm stamping, I don't know if I already said, but I'm stamping on a piece of 4.25 by 5.5 inch paper tray ink white cardstock. And I'll be using a die to actually cut this down so it can layer on an A2 size card base. So here I am, I'm going to be stamping my first rays with the scattered straw, I believe. And these don't have to be perfect. I'm just kind of making them look like rays coming out from that sun. There's going to be a little bit of a buffer in between where that blended, blended sun is and where the rays start, just because that circle that I'm using using as a stencil is a little bit thicker. So you'll see how I take care of that in a bit. So I'm just going to be wiping off my stamp with a chamois towel here. And because it's all yellow, I'm not too concerned about getting it perfectly clean, but I wanted to wipe it off. Now I'm using my squeezed lemonade, and really I'm just stamping these rays on willy-nilly. And when I'm stamping freehand, I kind of like to stamp on some foam because it just gives you a little bit more surface, and you can press down, and I think you get better coverage that way with your stamping. Although, I prefer to use a Misty for everything, but I figured it would just take too long for this video to use a Misty. So now I'm using the fossilized amber, and I'm going to do the same thing. Just stamp on a bunch of rays, willy-nilly. They don't have to be perfect. I'm going to be doing a little bit of ink blending on top of them anyway, so, it covers up the, a little bit of the boo-boos anyway. So I'm just adding some more rays, hoping for some sunshine here. We actually had a nice sunny weekend in Thunder Bay, where I'm from, this past weekend, but it was kind of, unseasonably cool, actually. We were at our camp down on Lake Superior, and the wind was kind of off the lake, so it was a little bit chilly. So now I'm just adding on these rays, and as you see, that one overlapped. It doesn't matter. It's going to be covered up. So we're just trying, now I'm just going to be adding in, I'm just trying to fill them in to make it a little bit more solid and, give it a little bit more presence on the card, since that's my, my main focus for this one. So I'm just cleaning it off in between the stamping, and I'm going to bring back the squeezed lemonade, and I'm just going to layer in some more of that. I'm just going to clean off that little circle just so it doesn't get on my stamp there. Although, these Distress Oxide inks are pretty forgiving, and you could probably wipe it off the surface if you got a little contamination on there. But I don't like to mess with it, so I tend to try to clean it off in between if I remember. So see, as I said, I'm just sort of stamping them. I'm just trying to fill in my rays. They don't have to be perfect. I'm just going for kind of a distressed look. So now I'm going to remove my little stencil cover, and you notice there's a bit of a white like I said, a little white buffer zone in between the stamping and the blending there. So I'm going to blend a little bit of ink in that little buffer zone. I'm going to use the fossilized amber, and I'm just going to blend around the where that white area is to try and hide that. And then I'm going to bring my inks back in, and I'm going to do a little bit more ink blending, clean it off on a little bit of microfiber cloth there. And I'm going to go to Squeeze Lemonade. Now, if I was changing colors, that's why I like these Tailored Expression blending brushes with the color on them, because you don't grab them and then, blend blue or something and, mess up your blending. You tend to stay in the same color family, so you don't have to worry about cleaning them off too much, although I do clean them off in between, rubbing them down on chamois. So there we are. So I've just blended some more ink. I'm just going to add a little bit of splatter with my Ranger sprayer, but I just took it out of took the sprayer out of the nozzle. I'm just flicking on some water, and then I'm going to let it sit for a second, and I'll pick it up with that same microfiber cloth. Just because I'm just, it doesn't have to be perfect, right? So I'm trying to give it a little bit of distressed looking is what I'm going for anyway. So now I'm just going to dry it with my Marvy heat tool, and try to get everything flattened down, because when you're not using watercolor paper, this paper really isn't meant for water, but it's thicker, and it's pretty forgiving. So as long as you dry it well, and you don't put too much water on there, you're okay. But you're going to get a lot of warping with thinner cardstocks for sure if you do this. So you might want to think about that. You could have done this actually on watercolor cardstock, I guess. Now I cut this image out with my 4 by 5 5.25 inch card mat die. So that's the perfect layer for my A2 size card. I'm making a vertical A2 card. So I'm just, like I said, I just ran that through my Gemini machine and cut that out quickly. And I like how that turned out. So now I'm going to be doing a little bit of stamping. I'm bringing in my Misty because I'm going to stamp a sentiment. So I'm stamping a sentiment from that Rain or Shine set. And it says, there is a sunshiny birthday in your forecast. That's what we always hope for, right? So I'm just adding my magnets. I'm using my little alignment tools. I can't remember what they're called. Misty Perfect Edges, or I don't know what they're called. Anyways, it's basically alignment rulers for your stamps. So I'm going to use that just to make sure I get it straight. And I realize I've got to move my magnets to do that. So I'm just going to use the sharp edge of that, and I'll get that straight. This only works if your stamp is straight and not like, doesn't have higher or lower areas. Luckily for this one, it doesn't. So I'm able to line that up. I'm going to close my Misty door and pick it up. And then I'll put my magnets back in place for the stamping. That way you can stamp more than once, and it'll be in the right spot. So right now I'm just pulling on my VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and that's my preferred ink for stamping sentiments. And I'm going to stamp ink up this sentiment. Got some on my Misty there. But that's okay. Just got to be careful while you're stamping. And I'm just going to apply a little bit of pressure. And it actually turns out pretty good, but I do go for a second inking just to be sure. Because, I like my sentiments to pop if I can. So I'm just going to add a little bit more ink and stamp again. And there we go. So now I'm all set. So I'm going to start to build my card. And of course, I accidentally do not turn on my camera for the next little part. I accidentally add my card to the base through the magic of video. I've just popped that up with foam tape, and I use the Spring Dies 2 cloud dies, and I cut out 2 out of my paper tray ink white cardstock and 1 out of cut cardstock CTI Glamma translucent paper, which is basically just a thin vellum. Now I'm going to add some sparkling clear confetti from Pretty Pink Posh. And I'm going to use my Studio Katia embellishment wand to add those on. I'm using glossy accents. I'm going to put a few random dots here and there so I can add those to my card base just for a little bit of shine, because you always want a little bit of shine. Now that yellow cardstock is actually from Simon Says Stamp, and I can't remember the name to save my life, but it's their dark yellow cardstock. It kind of matched with the Distress Oxide inks that I chose. So now I'm just adding my my little confetti with my Studio Katia embellishment wand. And I'm loving it, actually. It's nice. It has a wax end. It picks up the embellishments really well. It's pretty darn handy, I have to say. So now I'm just going to add that one there. And then I decide, of course, because I can't leave well enough alone, I decide that I'm going to add some Nuvo Jewel Drops in Limoncello. So this is like a translucent, the jewel drops are translucent. The crystal drops are obviously, opaque, but the jewel drops, you can see through them. So, you choose a yellow and it's pretty much going to go with any yellow because it will pick up the colors behind. So I'm just going to test it out on a piece of cardstock, make sure it's flowing okay. And then I'll be adding some random dots around. I actually add some to the centers of my confetti also, just, to add a little something. But I think this really turned out cute. I quite like the look of it. It was nice and simple, a quick little card. Got me down in my craft room to play a little bit, which is always nice. And that's about it. I'm just adding my little dots. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I hope to see you soon with another Jaded Blossom card. Thanks again. See you later. Bye.